Hi, and welcome to The Leader's Edge. Today we have a special guest. His name is Jon Rosemberg, and Georgia will introduce him properly in a minute. And we are talking about this really interesting topic because Jon wrote a book which is a guide to thriving. So we are going to be talking about this idea of thriving. And of course, we all aspire for success and to feel like we are authentically thriving. Yet, if you do a quick and honest poll among your friends, yourself included, I think the majority of us feel like we're just getting by, honestly. So, the awareness question for you today, very simply, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 equals surviving, just getting by, and 10 equals actually thriving, feeling like you're thriving. I'm curious about what number you'll put on that scale for yourself today. So, with that, I would turn you over to Georgia to introduce our lovely guest.
Thank you so much, Emily. Good morning. Jon, it's a special pleasure to have you. We are so happy that you decided to join us on our show this morning. And Emily, we're happy that we've gone international. Jon is one of our international guests. So welcome to the Leader's Edge, Jon. And for our
Thank you for
viewers,
having me.
yes, and for our viewers who have never met you, Jon, I just wanted to give them a little insight into who you are. And then I'm going to ask you to share something a little more about yourself. So, if you've heard of the company Strong Point Group, he is the CEO of that organization, and he's also co founder of one called Anthem. Jon is a leadership coach, an executive coach. He is into organizational transformation, and his expertise is in leadership development. So you're talking about people, Jon. You're always talking about leading people, guiding people, and organizations, making sure that they survive and thrive. I remember in COVID, all we were thinking of, how do we survive this? But Jon,
Mhm.
you're talking about not just surviving, thriving. What prompted you, Jon? Tell us about your story and what prompted you into diving into thriving.
I was born and raised in Caracas, Venezuela. As people are aware from the news and what we've heard over the past couple of decades, the country descended into anarchy and chaos over that time. So I would argue that I spent the first 40 years in my life in survival mode. Even after I live in Toronto now with my wife and my two kids, even after I moved to Canada, it took me over a decade to kind of move away from that state of survival mode. So
Mhm,
when I finally started to kind of step out of it and found out this notion that we can also thrive in
mhm.
life, I got really really curious about it. So I ended up, there's a long story here, we can get into it, but
Yeah,
I ended up quitting my job, going back to school, starting my own business, and part of it landed me writing this book. But the general idea is that I think for most of us, and not for all of us, because if you're in a war zone, or if you're living paycheck to paycheck, or if you're
mhm,
struggling to make ends meet, I would say survival mode is really helpful. It's really useful because sometimes if I was growing up in Caracas, if I wasn't in survival mode, I might not be here talking to you today. So
that's true.
survival mode can be really useful and really helpful. For those of us whose basic needs are covered, and that we have a strong social network and connections, and we can have more moments of thriving in life if we choose to do so. And that, Georgia and Emily, is the big thesis of the book, that we can go through
Mm,
survival mode, from survival mode to thriving, by increasing our capacity to make intentional choices, which I call agency. And
uh-huh.
Mhm.
this word agency is gaining more and more momentum because,
Mhm,
as technology is kind of getting more and more advanced, it feels like more and more choices are getting taken away from our hands. So
mhm.
so to me, this idea of agency is a very powerful one, and one that it's important that we become aware of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Jon, as you were speaking, I don't know why Maslow's hierarchy of needs just came to me. And the survival, some things that you just want to make sure that you have those needs, those basic needs, and then self-actualization. Is there any relationship between that survival and your thriving? And what's your definition of thriving?
Yeah, so I love that you brought Maslow into the picture. As a matter of fact, yes, he's thinking was certainly an important part of my writing, and one of the interesting things that people don't often talk about is that Maslow later in life revised the pyramid and added something. Uh, After self-actualization, which is self-transcendence, and there's a whole chapter in the book that talks about transcendence and the transcendence of the self.
Mm.
That's a very good point. Now, how I define thriving,
Mm-hmm.
Emily, when you were introducing the show, you said we all want to be more successful, and I would say this notion that thriving and success are the same thing has become really embedded in society.
Mhm.
And I'd like to separate the two and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of test what it looks like to separate the two. So, success is often defined as by extrinsic drivers or
Mm-hmm.
extrinsic motivators. So, you can define success by money, status, and power. Those are
Right.
three of the big pillars of success.
Right.
And the interesting thing about those extrinsic motivators is that you can always have more of them. You can always have more money. You can always have
Yes.
more power, and you can always have
There's
more
no
status.
limit.
So
Mm-hmm.
no matter, I work with clients who are in the CEOs and founders who've built incredible businesses and had incredible exits of multi hundreds of millions of dollars, and when even for those folks who are doing incredibly well in life, uh, it can be a struggle to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
You can be really successful by a lot of metrics and still not be thriving.
Yes.
So if success is money, power, and status, then what is thriving? So I define thriving as agency.
Mm-hmm.
And as we said, that's the capacity to make intentional choices supported by the belief that those choices matter and have an impact on the world. So that's agency. Um, Connection, and by connection, I mean not just social connection, which is incredibly important, but also connection to nature, to animals, and connection to the transcendent. And that may be God or religion or whatever it is that you connect to. And then
Mm-hmm.
the third element of thriving is meaning, and that's the why behind
Mm-hmm.
we do things and the sense that we make of the life that we're leading. So I just wanted to separate those two things because
Mm-hmm.
I think that's right. And by the way, I'm all for success just as much as the next person, and I want success
Yes.
in my life. And it's not success bad, thriving good. They're both good and bad. And the question is, when we start trading thriving for success, what does that look like for us?
Mm-hmm.
Mm. I never thought of it like trading, thriving for success. I always looked at it as an and, like being successful and feeling like you're thriving. Because I feel like yes, we can end up trading it if
Mm-hmm.
we value one over the other, or we could figure out how to, when you know me, have the pie, have both.
Yeah, well, let's maybe make it a little bit more concrete, right?
Uh-huh.
If we use what is one of the most invaluable resources we have as humans on this earth, time, and how we invest our time determines the kind of life that we lead.
Mm-hmm.
And what we see happening a lot in certain societies is that some folks are investing their time to make money. So we work 16-hour day. By the way, I was one of those. So this
Mm-hmm.
is why I'm here. 16-hour days, 7 days a week, working to make money,
Mhm.
and then trying to use that money to buy back the things that we wanted to do with that time, which is I have two kids, one is 13 and the other is 10. You know, using that money to try and buy back time with my kids or to
Mm-hmm.
try and buy back my health or try and buy back. So that's why I'm saying, yes, you can have success and
It's
thriving. I think you
Mm-hmm.
can have them both,
yeah.
Yes.
but at some point you start having to make a trade-off.
Yeah, so it's a balance.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really and I think that's where the personal choice comes in, right? Really,
Yes.
that agency word that you mentioned.
Yeah. If you believe, and a lot of us believe this, I used to believe this, that if you're not successful, you're not safe. And a lot of us have this belief. If you believe that, then you will pursue success at all costs.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter you make $100,000, you make $1 million, you make $50 million, you make $1 billion, you still want more, right? Because you don't
Mm-hmm.
feel that safety. So if we looked at it, right, there is a point where the trade-off occurs.
Mm-hmm.
But if we choose to balance them both, then it can be a little bit different. But that requires agency. It requires that
Yeah.
capacity to make intentional choices.
Yeah.
Intentional
So
choices.
I love that you mentioned, people like a common belief is that to be safe, you must be successful. And I think that's where you maybe the jump off point into again choosing um, to shift that belief framework. So is that where the book takes us with this transcendence idea of transcendence, so that safety is not in the form of dollars in the bank necessarily, or like whether it's a billion or a million or how much ever. I'm curious when you mentioned that, like how break that down for us in terms of how when you look at thriving and this concept of success, safety, how shifting us away from that mindset may allow us to choose something
Yeah.
else.
So the way the book is structured, so first of all, it's not really a book. It's more of a guide. And what I mean by that is that you can pick it up, open it up on any chapter and just read that. I
Uh,
realize that, attention is scarce these days, and that for a lot of people, reading a book cover to cover is no longer accessible. So it's the book is organized with a map that has 9 elements in it. In the
Mhm.
middle of the map, the element is beliefs. So I believe and this is funny because this is one of my beliefs that you could challenge, but I believe if we challenge our beliefs, then we can find that agency, because beliefs are like this lenses that we have through which we
mm-hmm.
look at the world, and whatever tint it has impacts how we navigate. So if you believe the world is dangerous, you are
Mm-hmm.
going to navigate the world very different than if you believe the world is safe. So all
Right.
of these core beliefs that we have can really impact our decisions and how we engage with other people, and ultimately whether we have a thriving life or a life where we're just in survival mode.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I like that, John. And we're talking about success and safety, and the shift from thinking that to be safe you have to be successful, to thinking that I'm successful, and because I'm successful, there's an element of safety in what I've accomplished. I don't know if we're seeing, how can we can look at it differently. So
Mm.
it's not making sure that I have to get all this money to be safe. I now have money. What is my safety level? Am I safe? And challenging that assumption.
Yeah, and I think if we take a nervous system lens to this, one of the big questions is, when do I find myself being regulated? When do I find myself engaging with the world with an open mind? So we can get into the neuroscience of it. Hopefully, it
Mm-hmm.
can be a little boring, but maybe let me share a story instead. I
Yeah.
spent two and a half decades in the corporate world, just climbing through the corporate ladder and trying to achieve more and more and more and more. And after that, I got recruited by a startup, and we were doing a Series B raise. We raised $150 million to expand the business. And I felt like I was in cloud nine. I had the title that I wanted. I had a big team. I was making money. I had, stock options, all of these great things. I went on a trip to Los Angeles to buy some facilities. And when I got back to Toronto after that trip, I was exhausted. I was running on fumes. So I got in a call with the technical team, and in the middle of the call, uh, we got into an argument, and it escalated really, really fast. So at one point, I said, enough. And I just shut off my computer, turned off my phone, and I was sitting right here in this home office that I am right now. And I heard my kids playing in the basement. So I went downstairs to the basement, and they were sitting on the floor playing Legos. And I just sat and I started playing with them, and I played with them for about an hour. And what hit me in that moment is that I thought I was doing all of that for them, and it
Mm-hmm.
turns out that I wasn't present. I was like a
Mhm.
shell, like a zombie. They would see me at lunch, they would see, or sorry, at breakfast or at dinner, they would see me here and there, but I wasn't actually there for them. I wasn't actually engaging in conversation with them. I wasn't actually connecting with them on a human
Mm-hmm.
level. So that night I was sitting in my favorite chair and Adriana walks in and she says, "Hey, are you okay?" And I said, "I think I'm done." So
Mm-hmm.
over the next couple of weeks, I untangled myself from the company. I started my own business and I did all of these different things, right? So I went from feeling like I had no agency for the
Yes.
longest time, that I had to do this job. And if I left this job, in my mind, I would be living under a bridge in 2 weeks if I left the job. That's what my mind told me. And I
Yes.
believed it.
Yes.
I believed it. And then I had this moment, this thriving moment, right, where I had some agency, and I said, I
Mm-hmm.
can also leave. So I see agency on a spectrum, and I would say I went
Mm-hmm.
from having very low agency to having some agency.
Mm-hmm.
Having really high agency would have been saying, oh, I can stay in the job and maybe change my role structure, hire more people, work in a different way, not set clearer boundaries around my time, all of those things.
Yeah.
Or I can leave this job and I don't have to start a business. I can rest. I can go work for somebody else. So when we have high agency, we suddenly see this rainbow of choices
Mm.
in front of
Right.
us.
The
And we
options are
get to
there.
intentionally pick what we think will work best.
Yes, yes. I just wanted to make sure that our audience knows that that picture behind you, John, it may look like a bridge to some people. Just want to say that you're not living under a bridge. You left, but you're not living under a bridge. We just want to
I am
confirm that.
not. I am not. But it hasn't been easy. I'll say this:
Mhm.
I'm blessed and thankful that my family's provided for. But
Mhm.
it hasn't been. Starting a business is not easy. Trying to get out, leaving a job like the one I had, which I had worked so hard for, it's been really hard. And the story sounds nice because it's nicely packaged,
Packaged.
but
Mhm.
that's a process that took years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what I find is that change often happens in small incremental pieces. So
Mhm.
what I shared sounds like an epiphany and this wonderful moment of enlightenment, which is great for an interview. But the
Yeah,
reality is that it was a lot of really small, tiny changes that accumulated over time, and that's usually how change happens.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Another important thing I want our listeners and our viewers to know is that it's not only the corporate space where people may feel that they don't have agency. We want to make that point because there are also people who are entrepreneurs who feel they don't have agency. They feel they have to grab onto that entrepreneurship. And there are others who have moved out of entrepreneurship into what they think now is the safety of being in corporate life or some other space. So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter where you are, it's how you feel. It's your reality.
Yeah. And it goes well beyond work, it goes into
Right.
life,
Yeah.
Yes.
your
Yeah.
friends, your habits, how
Mm-hmm.
you move through life, like all of those things are, your community. A lot of people feel very restricted by their communities. So there's this tension between belonging and authenticity that's really important, and that I
Mm-hmm.
think it's worth also considering.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So for people listening, John, I'm curious as we are getting close to where we need to bring it, like put a little bow on it. How would one maybe start to think of their own sense of agency? Because I guess what I was hearing a lot, like the epiphanies that came that caused the ripple effect of all the changes, would have been when we feel, as you say, like kind of stuck out of options, like this is it, and it's a grind, and it's no
Mm-hmm.
longer fun, and it's more of a grind than it is fun. So
Yeah.
maybe what was really fun at one point turns into this grind, and it requires us to step back and to take stock and to uh, sort of relook at the whole thing to determine, as you said, where am I in it, and sort of put yourself back, I guess, in the picture. Tell us how your method in a I mean, I guess a summary way of like how would we start this process and what would be some of the steps.
Yeah. So what I found, this is a great question, Emily, and I think so. I see agency as a skill. It's something that you can develop and get better at the more you
Mm-hmm.
practice. And what I found when I went into the research is that there were three things that help us develop agency, and I summarize them in an acronym: AIR. AIR as in the air we breathe,
Breathe.
and
Mm-hmm.
AIR stands for awareness,
Mm-hmm.
inquiry, and reframing. Now,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean? So awareness. So my youngest son was going to summer camp last year, and he fell and broke his arm. So while all his friends were jumping in the lake, he ended up playing with a Rubik's cube. So I
Mm-hmm.
have a Rubik's cube here in I actually have several of them, but I just want to use this to explain kind of how air works. When
Okay.
we're going through a difficult situation or a difficult thought or a difficult emotion, we're in it. And what it means is that the Rubik's Cube is like it's right next to your face, right next to your eye. It's very close. So you can't actually see the cube. All you can see is one of the little stickers, maybe a couple of them, right? That's why when people are angry, they say, I see red, like so when we're in the middle of it, we don't actually have perspective. We're just in it.
Yeah.
What awareness does is it allows us to get a little bit of distance from the situation. Awareness gives us that little space, 12, 15, 16 inches, so we can actually see. Once we have that awareness and we say, oh, there's an object in front of me, and we're not longer subject to the object,
Mm-hmm.
then we can say, okay, inquiry. Let me ask some questions. What is this? Oh, it looks like a kid's toy. And he has six sides, and each side has 9 different stickers with different colors. And look, it moves. Oh, that's interesting. So we get really curious, asking open-ended questions. So that's inquiry. Reframing is finding the combination of the Rubik's Cube that works for us in the moment. Now, that may be solving the Rubik's Cube, or it may be something completely different, but it's changing the combination that helps us unlock that difficult situation, that difficult moment, that difficult emotion. So that's kind of like the brief,
Mm.
the $1 version of
Yeah.
the AIR method.
I'll never look at a Rubik's Cube the same way again. Oh, that's a
I love
nice
that.
way. That's a nice way. Well, Emily, all we have to do now is just put that little bow on it because John
Yeah.
has given us the good stuff.
John has given us the good stuff. So I want to encourage people to get John's book, A Guide to Thriving. If this resonates with you and you're feeling some of that stuckness that we talked about, um, and maybe not clear on this idea of agency for yourself and
Mhm.
wanting to think about how you can make that shift,
Mhm.
then I think this book, A Guide to Thriving, which is, as John said, more of a guide than a book. So don't worry, you don't have to read the whole thing. Just look for the pages you need. And see what comes from taking stock, from getting that sense of perspective, allowing yourself to take that time. Because at the end of the day, as John said earlier on, one thing we do have, the only thing that we humans have on this planet is some time. So
Yeah.
how are we spending our time?
Yes.
So with that, I want to say thank you to John for
Thank
this
you,
time,
John.
spending this time with us today, and helping us understand, get some ideas on thriving, and yeah, just and congratulations again on the book, which is only 2 months old, people.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you
We're
for the
happy, we're
invitation.
happy to
It
be
was
there with you from the ground up.
Love it. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you to your listeners for dedicating the time. And if you want to reach me, you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can go to jonrosenberg.com, and I'm there. Reach out. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Wonderful. Have a
Thank you.
great week, everyone.
Yes.
See you soon.